Welcome to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Cessna, and I bring you, the Phoenix family, a weekly podcast about alchemy, spirituality, magic, mysticism, and more. The Spiritual Phoenix Podcast is fan-funded, and you can contribute with the link in the show notes. Other ways to show your support include subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us excellent reviews wherever possible, engaging with our content on social media, shooting me an email, and sending an audio message through the Anchor app. This is a community podcast. I'm just the humble host. Let's start the show. All right, welcome everybody. We are joined by Danny Levin. Danny, how are you doing today, man?
Oh, if I was any better, it would be illegal, Russ. We already had this conversation, but I love saying that because I love the image it conjures up in people's minds. It's always most likely better than the one that I'm actually living, but why not enjoy that dream, right?
Absolutely. It's definitely a conversation starter, that's for sure, and it invokes a lot of imagery. One of the questions I like to ask any guest right out of the gate is, what are you grateful for today?
Wow. What am I not grateful for? One of the things that I think most people take for granted is the very breath that gives us life. And when we take a moment to sit with that breath, when we take a moment to allow that breath to communicate to us and listen to it, what we realize is the very thing that gives us life in this world gives life to everything we want. They say that you can go weeks without food. You can go days without water, but you can only go minutes without air. And yet what we do is we relegate that breath, that breathing process and that process of life to the subconscious mind, thinking, well, we don't have time to think about our breath. That's something we're just going to put on habit control. But when we look at our breath speaks to us. And there are different types of breaths. And one of the things that I write about in the Mosaic is that after Mo, the protagonist, meets a lot of different people on his journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about. He meets a monk who introduces him to the four breaths. And on the fifth breath, after his introduction of the four breaths, the monk unzips the sky and walks him through to a parallel reality where he meets the wise one and where he starts to understand what the Mosaic is.
Wow, I'm really intrigued.
Amazon.com. Go get it, man. And I want people to pick it up and read it, not because of the few dollars I make, although that's great too. I'm not against making money. But nothing in this world is the way it seems. Nothing. And we think we know the world. We think we know what we see. We think we understand things. We think our point of view is so spot on. But none of it is. The way we see is the world is only the way we see the world. It isn't the way the world is. And just with that simple question of what am I grateful for and the simple answer of my breath, how amazing this gift is that we're giving, that we never even those of us who are conscious. I've been meditating for 45 years. I know the power of my breath, but most of the day I don't know the power of my breath. Most of the day I just inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Even when I try and sit with it, I can only sit with it for a certain amount of time and then I go back into random. But nothing's random. If we watch the way we inhale and we watch the way we exhale, it'll tell us light years of information about ourselves.
I've gotten so much stuff to think about just in that opening thing about gratitude. Like on one level, I was aware that breath was a really good thing to kind of begin focusing on for consciousness expansion and all that stuff. But like I never really viewed it as a simple way to really make the subconscious conscious, and you really drew that to the surface, which I think is really, really important. It's kind of, it's a fascinating thing to really entertain.
I love that. So go the other place too, because not only is there a subconscious and a conscious, there's also a superconscious. And if we would realize that we are one connection away from everything we want. And that one connection is so present to us. If we would get out of the silos of what we think we see and allow the mystery of the unseen to enter into us and allow us to see what we've never seen before. In the air that we are breathing in right this minute are the molecules of the greatest people that ever lived and the worst people that ever lived. And we look at a mic, we think we're this body, we think we're solid, we think, wow, this is just we're form. But when scientists look at our body under a microscope, they don't see any form. What they see is swirls of energy, protons and neurons and atoms. I'm not smart enough scientifically to even know what all those things are. But they see all these things moving. And when Einstein said his theory of relativity, he created a formula for us that we know that matter is the result of the speed of light, and what we see is the result of the speed of light and the density of our movement. Mm-hmm. So because our molecules are moving at this pace, and we see it in this light, we see this form, but we can change that in a moment. If we can change that reality, if we can change the amount of light we bring, or the density, or the speed, everything changes. So what we actually see isn't even what is. I mean, take this simple example of our body. When you look at our body, this seems pretty solid. When I look at this table I'm sitting at, this seems pretty solid. But there's nothing solid in it. Mm-hmm. In a moment, we can change all those cells around if we knew how to do it, if we would contemplate it or sit with it. In our inhalation and our exhalation is the power to actually change the vibration of our body. I don't want to get too carried away because I don't want to pontificate, but I could go on for hours on this. You could see.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely into it. And those are definitely things that I've kind of encountered in my own life and within my own research. One of the next questions I like to ask everybody is, who are you and what do you do?
Good question. If you find out, let me know, okay? I am who I've always been, and I am who I'll always be. And no amount of siloing, and no amount of hiding, and no amount of trying to broadcast to people something other than that will ever be successful. I've had the beauty of living a very peculiar life. I've had the opportunity to sit with the richest people in the world and call them my friends, and sit on street corners with the poorest of the poor. And Ross, one of the things that I've seen, no matter what economic structure you fit into, no matter what border you live behind, no matter what the color of your skin, what language you speak, or what religion you practice, every single one of us, underneath all the superficial differences, wants the same thing. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be listened to and heard. And we want to be validated and appreciated. That's all. It's so simple, Russ. And it's so simple that we make it confusing. We have the power to give that to every single person we meet. We have the power to give it to ourselves. We don't even do it for ourselves. We don't even love and accept ourselves. How will we do it for anybody else? But once I realized that all anybody wants is to be loved and appreciated, heard and understood, no one says to me, I want you to agree with everything that I say. They could care less. If they feel heard and listened to and acknowledged and validated for what they believed and loved, some of my best friends have thoughts way different than mine, but they're my best friends. What they think doesn't make them unapproachable to me. But we live in a world today, especially today, where the divides between like-mindedness have gotten so wide and deep that what was once this beautiful pond that I discovered of people that thought like me, because I always thought I'm strange and I'm distant and I'm not like everybody else. So when I found a like-minded community, I thought, hallelujah, this is the best place I've ever been. These people think like me. I'm no longer strange, or I'm no longer weird. I'm just like, I fit right in here. What was once my salvation now is turning into that which is tearing us apart. Because those like-minded communities are getting bigger and stronger. And the gaps and spaces between them are getting wider and deeper. And so it's time for us to come out of our silos of like-minded community and walk onto the field where there's no silo to protect us, because there doesn't need to be any protection. To mix with people of like and unlike mind again. To listen to what people say, to share what we believe, to speak without anger and listen without judgment, and allow people that space to tell us who they are. When we let people speak to us and tell us their story, the world we live in becomes so much richer. The possibilities that exist become so much more. The opportunities that open up for us become so revolutionary. It's amazing what's possible when we come together. But somehow we live so isolated, and we think we've grown up thinking we have to be superheroes or extraordinary, or these are my superpowers, or I've got to be this incredible person. Well, we don't. We just have to be ourselves. Does this make sense, what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, I definitely resonate with everything you're saying. One of the things that came up to me, and you've said it a couple of times, and I'm curious more of the concept of it, is siloing and this silo concept.
Yeah, well, think about it. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience, and if it resonates, great. If it doesn't, see if you have an experience that's yours. I lost my parents, my dad when I was 13, my mom when I was 15, 2 years apart on the same day. I probably knew pain before that, but that pain was so great that it made me put walls of protection around myself. And so walls of protection became my silos. But what I've realized is I'm not protecting myself from what you're going to do to me. I'm literally protecting myself from what I'm going to do to me. Because I'm way harder on myself than you'll ever be on me. And when I think about how hard I am, and how much I put myself down, how much I sabotage my efforts, how much I say I'm not good enough, how much I say, no, you can't do that, how much I say I'm going to do this, oh, no, you're not. And those voices in my head try and tear me apart because of what? Why? Because of stories that aren't even true that I created, that have no truth to them in this day. But those silos now are so close to me that I can't see you. And because I don't know when I'm going to hit myself or where I'm going to hit myself, my silo of 3 millimeters from my body to protect myself from my own attack. Like, look how close I am I have to protect myself at this point. So that wall that I build to protect myself from me is this close to my face and all the way around my body, because I don't know when or where I'll hit myself. And it's up 24/7 because I don't want to get hurt anymore. And so silos to me represent the walls that we put around ourselves, whether that's my own personal walls, the walls of the like-minded community that say, this is what we believe, not what you believe. But walls, they have a saying in India that talks about karma. And they talk about karma as chains that bind you. And they say chains of gold, as beautiful as they are still chains. So it doesn't matter how beautiful our walls are. What I see most of the time is people who do what I still do, but I don't do it nearly as much as I did before. It's very rare now. I see people.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Last thought. What I see is people who paint their walls to make us believe that that's who they are. to stop us from looking over those walls, to see them quivering, scared to death that someone will actually see who they are. It's time for us to let down those walls. It's time for us to hold the space for each other to just love and accept each other. It's time for us to say to each other, Russ, as your friend, tell me of your suffering. Tell me of your pain. And I'm going to hold this space out here for you to pour all of your suffering, all of your pain into the space. And even if we were to know each other more than the 18 minutes we know each other now, and you were to say to me, Danny, my suffering comes as a result of you. You're the reason why I'm suffering. I don't defend myself there. I don't try and rationalize it. I say to you, Russ, please tell me more. Let me just hear everything that troubles you. And put it all in this space. And Thich Nhat Hanh, this beautiful monk from Vietnam, calls that compassionate listening. Because in that process of compassionate listening, what happens is everything that troubles you, everything that you suffer from, all the pain that you experience, you empty yourself of it into this holding tank. And through the compassion of my listening, I help to remove your suffering. Not because I've done anything or I'm some sort of hero, just because I've taken the time to listen. I've taken the time to hear you. I've given the space for you to pour it out of yourself into this tank, into this holding tank. And those are beautiful moments, Russ. So what do? I do the easiest thing in the world. I don't need a diploma to do it. I don't need money to do it. I don't need anybody to tell me I can do it. When I'm with people, I listen to them. And I let them empty their suffering into this holding tank.
That's a very, very beautiful answer. There's a lot to respond to within that. I like how you explain siloing, because for me, it makes it like you're preventing not only yourself from sharing kind of the bounty of your harvest of your life, but you're preventing other people from getting the benefit of everything that you've harvested through your experience. And for me personally, I'm a recovering addict with a history of mental health issues. And throughout my whole process, I've had to like really open my walls in order to get better and let other people in and let a lot of stuff out. And also be there for other people with that kind of active listening and presence. And there's so much beauty within that process, but in order to fully appreciate it, you have to be on both sides of everything. And I really do agree that people don't recognize how any walls that they build to keep other people out, keep them prisoner. There's so much there. And I really appreciate too, how what you do is kind of just live your life and be the best person that you can be. And that's one of the reasons why I even got into all of this, is to talk to other people, kind of hear their stories, and to let other people have a platform to share their experience, potentially motivate other people.
Beautiful. If you think about those silos, Russ, and it's really a lot of the work that I do. I do it on myself and I do it with other people. If we're hard on ourselves and we need to protect ourselves from ourselves, when I meet you, my work is around helping people connect. It's around connection. It's one of the things we all want. We want to feel a connection. We live in the most connected time the world has ever known, but we're more isolated and alone than we've ever been. How is that possible? Right? And so the work you're doing of having a forum for people to share their stories is such a beautiful work. And that's exactly what Mo did, the main character in my story, The Mosaic. When his parents died 2 years apart on the same day, the easiest thing in the whole world for him to do would have been to silo up, to not allow the pain in the world to come to him. But when he asked the adults where his parents were, they told him they were in this place called heaven. And so he had no choice. He went out immediately in search of that place called heaven. And opportunities in this world came to him that were incredible opportunities to have tons of money, to run businesses, to expand the consciousness of the world. And he did it for a while. He tried it for a while. But one of the things that happened is he realized that isn't the heaven that I'm looking for. That's a beautiful place on earth, but that's not that place that I remember of my mom and dad just holding me with complete unconditional love. I didn't have to be anything for them. They just held me. And I have a picture that I think I've looked at maybe 10 times in the course of my life, but I don't have to look at it anymore because it's emblazed in my mind right now. Even just talking about it, I see it as clearly as the moment it happened, where the way they were holding me showed me that who I was enough for them. I didn't need to be any more. I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to become somebody of fame or fortune. Our job here isn't to become well known or famous or have a lot of money. Our job here is to hold the space for another human being, to feel so completely, unconditionally loved that they drop those silos in our presence because there's no need for them. If I know you're not going to hit me, I don't need to put up a wall to protect myself from you. And if you know that I'm going to be here and listen to you and hold you and give you the space to just be free, you don't need to protect yourself from me either. And suddenly, walls melt, opportunities open up. Imagine what that does in a relationship, in a love affair, in a business, in a family, in a nation, in a school, in a hospital. Imagine the power of just holding the space for people to be loved and appreciated.
It's definitely a powerful thing.
It seems so simple to me. But we believe things have to be hard. And even the very nature of the world we live in, we believe what we see is real, but it isn't real. It's only a small portion of what's real. I often say to people, the lie has become so easy to believe, we call it the truth. And the truth has become so hard to believe, we call it a lie. But the truth isn't a lie, and the lie isn't true. The truth is we're all connected. How is it possible that you and I, who know each other all of about 18 minutes, maybe 20 minutes now, right, can have a conversation of such depth where we resonate so much together, and we've never met each other before? Coincidence? Maybe, but not likely. And what happens is the more people do what you do through your show, where you just give people the platform to share who they are, the more we start to see that the differences we experience are superficial. Color of our skin doesn't mean anything. I hear something. Are you getting a phone call?
Yeah, I was getting a buzz. I'm shutting it off right now. Normally I have my phone off. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I thought, the vibrations of the world were, no, it isn't. But does that make sense to you?
No, absolutely. It's very powerful how there's connection with anybody. And that's one of the main things that I've found for myself in the past couple of years. There's common threads that I have with every living person on this world. And all of us have dreams, hopes, desires, all of those kind of things. And when we begin to focus on the similarities, which there's far more similarities to all of us as human beings than there are differences, we begin to get a completely different experience. And a lot of the stuff that we have to do is really shed this lie of how the world is, this pre-constructed understanding of what the world is, and actually experience it for ourselves. But then we have to really encounter all that fear and overcome the fear that's associated with it. It's a beautiful process, but it's not very comfortable, which is why people like you writing books, or me doing this, or me even writing my second book, like all of this stuff is so important, because it allows people to connect and experience, connect their experience to something that somebody else has already lived. And I have a question for you about your book. And I feel like the answer, I already know the answer, but I'm just curious. Is this based off of some of your own experiences, kind of like in a gonzo journalism sense of the way as well?
Yes. When I sat to write, I'm 63 years old now. So 3 years ago, when I sat to write the Mosaic, it wasn't the book that I originally thought to write. I wanted to write something that would be a legacy that I could give to my kids. Something that I could hand to my friends to say, this is the life that I've lived. And these are the few little nuggets that I've gotten out of it that I think are valuable. Not because I want you to follow them, just because I want you to understand me a little bit better. I sent that book off to a friend of mine, and she said, Danny, this isn't your book. And I said, what are you talking about? Do you think I plagiarized it? And she said, oh, no, not at all. These ideas are fresh and exciting and beautiful. But this isn't the way you are. This is a self-help book. You're a storyteller. Why don't you tell a story? And I said, well, this is sort of my legacy. What do you mean, to tell a story? Like, what would that even look like? I don't even know what that would be. And she said, write a fable. I said, come on, a fable is my legacy? What are you, crazy? And I fought her for about a minute and a half. Until I realized, hold it, there is such power in story. Because when I write a story, it's no longer a vertical relationship. It's no longer me teaching like self-help does. Self-help says, you're broken. I've got the answers. I'm going to teach you. A story is more like a mosaic. It's just pieces sitting together, sharing their life experience. And in that sharing of stories, we start to realize, hey, that makes me think of something else that I remember, just like we were talking earlier. And we were talking about California before we got on. And I was telling you how, and it just sparked in me something else that I had forgotten. The power of story is that it creates the miracle of connection. Because no longer are we worried about, is this him telling me what to do? Because we don't want to be told what to do anymore. We want the opportunity just to be able to share who we are, to be loved and accepted. And so the Mosaic is based on characters that I met in my life. A lot of them I met when I was hitchhiking around the world. I just wrote a Facebook post today about the hitchhiker. And they're beautiful stories. But they're not beautiful because they're my stories. The goal of the Mosaic isn't to say, look at these archetypes that I've created in the Mosaic that are a blind woman and a trash man and a juice maker, these ordinary people. It's to reawaken the thought in all of us that everybody we pass on the street, from the beggar sitting there begging for money to the man in the business suit, or the woman who is running a corporation, are all the same. They all want the same thing. And if we would take time to listen to their suffering, to listen to their story, what would happen? How would we enrich our life? Would it matter what color their skin was at that point? No. Would it matter what religion they practice? No. But we've gotten caught in the trivialities of life. And we've let the important things of life fall apart, just like we started. the breath, which is the most important thing that we could ever do. We can't go for more than a minute or two without breathing. But we don't give it any relevance. We're more concerned how our hair looks, or how thin our body is, or how fit or strong we are, or how much money we make, or how much we can tell another person how well we're doing. Sit in the presence of your breath. What the hitchhiker told me that I posted on the Facebook post that I did today on my Facebook page was, being a hitchhiker for a lot of years, he watched people and he saw how everything about the road for them was about getting somewhere else. But for him, hitchhiking had become the art of practicing where he was. So when I first met him, I said to him, something about him intrigued me. And I said, do you mind if I sit with you here? And he said, I don't care. Sure, you can sit with me. But if you want to get a ride, sit 10 feet in front of me or sit 10 feet in front and behind me. You'll get a ride very quickly. If you sit with me, you'll be here for a while. And I said, why is that? He said, because I have nowhere I need to be and no time I need to get there. I want to be where I am. And I said, I think this is where I want to be too. And he told me sometimes he would be sleeping on the road and a car would stop and wake him up and say, are you looking for a ride somewhere? And he would say, yes. And he would get in the car, but they would wake him up. He didn't have to put out all this effort to be the first one to get a ride. And it made me think about life, how much we try to be everywhere other than where we are. Why? Where we are is exactly the moment. It's rich. It's full. It has everything we need in this moment. It's the step between the step. And if we take the time to be present in this moment called now, the world that we will see will explode with possibilities. But too many of us want to be there. We want to get there quickly. And when we get there, we want to get somewhere else. And when we get somewhere else, we want to get there something else. We're not happy with where we are or who we are. We have to always be more than we are, better than we are, superheroes with superpowers. But that's not what we're intended to be. We're intended to be a connected reality. Imagine how a business would work if it worked connected. Imagine how a family would be if it was connected. Imagine how our government would be if we were connected. Imagine how anything in the world would function connected versus disconnected. It would always be better. So why do we live so disconnected? Puzzled.
That's definitely a very good question. It's always interesting doing this, how when I talk to people, how what they say lines up with right where I'm at in my life, kind of. One of the things that I'm trying to really work on is increasing my connection with people in my life in a real way, because it's one thing to have conversations like this and it's all well and good. But as far as like actual relationships and friendships on the day-to-day, something I really have to still work on. The other element of it too, that really springs to mind is being able to slow down and enjoy the moment. And I think that that's something that from doing my business and working on my book and all of this stuff in life, sometimes I forget to actually just live and be okay with being where I'm at and like just being happy, and remembering to take time to enjoy being alive. There's a lot of wisdom in what you shared. Definitely intrigued about your book. So this is kind of a fun question about your book. Who are two of your favorite characters besides the main character?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many of them. Every one of them is so rich for me. I think the one that comes to play often is the trash man. And it's funny, as a kid growing up, All my friends wanted to be doctors and lawyers. And I would sit out every Friday before school started. And I would sit on our lawn and I would wait for the trash truck to come. And in those days, the guys rode on the back of the truck and held on. And they went and picked up the cans and threw them into the truck. And I would just sit there and marvel. I was so amazed at the power of these guys that just come to every house and pick up these cans and throw it in the truck. And I love this truck that just grinded all the trash. And they took all the trash from the whole neighborhood and just put it in this truck, and it ground it down. And one day, one of them saw me sitting there and said, "Would you like to help us?" And I said, "Are you kidding? I would love that." And they had me ride on the back of the truck for 1 block with them and help them take the trash. And I was maybe I think I was maybe 5 years old. You know, it was like the dream come true. I was riding on this truck. And my mom and dad said to me, my mom especially said, "Danny, you can't go on the trash truck. I mean, that's not what we dreamed of you to be. You know, that's not a profession of honor and dignity. We want you to do something that you have a mind that can help the world." In writing the Mosaic, if my son wanted to be the trash man of the Mosaic, I would invest every dollar I had in allowing him to do that. Because in the story, here's what happens. Mo, the main character, the boy who lost his parents, is walking along the street. There's nothing in his hands, nothing on his back, just the clothes on his body. And a trash truck pulls up next to him and stops and says, "Do you have any trash?" And Mo looks at him, and he looks down at himself and says, "I'm not holding any trash. I'm not holding anything in my body. What could this guy be talking about?" And as soon as he's just about to say, "What the heck are you talking about? I don't have anything with me. I don't have any trash. Why would you ask me such a stupid question?" He takes a moment and he looks into the trash man's eyes. And he realizes the trash man isn't talking about physical garbage. He's talking about the trash inside his soul. All that stuff that's preventing him from doing what he needs to do, that's blocking his way, that's keeping him from having the things that he really wants to have. Because there's just mounds and mounds of it. And Mo says, "Oh my God, I have a lot of trash." And the trash man looks at him and says, "I have some time. If you'd like, I can help you bring it to the trash truck." And he said, "I would love that." What I realized 60 years later is I am a trash man. When you ask me what I do, I help people get rid of their trash.
That's very, very powerful. One of the guys who's been a mentor for me in this whole process of the past couple of years of my life, he always made this analogy of all of us having this kind of internal trash can. So it's interesting that you make that metaphor, and he kind of says when people go through their life and they never deal with it, it eventually starts overflowing, and then one little thing can make this huge mess. So part of what I have to do in my personal life, me personally, is like do this 12-step program in order to sort out what's garbage and what's good and what I can utilize and clean it away. And I definitely think that having people like you've mentioned earlier, or like the character like the trash man, is essential for happiness, because not everybody gets the opportunity to sort through everything on their own or to look at it as in depth. But for me, and I'm sure this is true for you as well, I should say, let me rephrase that. I'll ask you if this is true for you after I say it. Keeping that trash clear is one of the best ways to keep my signal to the source, universe, God, whatever anybody wants to call it, clear. It allows me to live such a more present experience. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, but I think I come at it from a different perspective that I'd love to share with you, not because I want you to believe my perspective, just because I want to share with you mine.
Absolutely.
The Mosaic, as beautiful as its story is, most of what it has taught me is not in the words of the story, but in the space between the words. And when I allow the space between the words to actually speak to me, revelations start to come that I never even dreamed possible. I understand now why, when I was trying to write it the way I wanted to write it, and it would keep destroying it, why it did that. Because I'm reading it now and it's as if I've never read it before, or never even wrote it, or never even knew what was going on. Because the space between the words speaks volumes. What we don't see speaks much more than what we do see. And one of the messages that it tells me is we have to get rid of all the stories that we believe about ourselves. Because those stories just are not true. They're just stories. What we are, who we've been, what we believe, what we don't believe, just stories. Our thoughts become our words. Our words make up our stories. And our stories become our life. If we change any part of that equation, every part of it changes. It has to. And so what would happen if the story of this is what I need to do, of I need to empty my garbage, not, I'm just using that because it's an example that's on the table, became a different story? I don't need to do anything. The garbage man comes to my house every week. He happens to come Monday mornings to my house where we live now. But I believe in most places in the country, there's a set day and a set time that the garbage man comes to every neighborhood. We don't have to fret about all the work we have to do. All we need to do is roll our can out to the curb. The garbage man will help us. We're not in this by ourselves. The Mosaic wants us to know we're connected to each other. The very thought that you have that I have to empty my garbage communicates to the world of people who take garbage that they need to come and help you relieve that burden. We're not in this alone. It's not a struggle. We don't have to follow. And for God's sake, I'm not saying don't follow 12-step. What a fabulous program it is, okay? But what would also happen for you right now? Pardon me for being so personal, okay?
Oh, you're fine.
But I'm not speaking to you. If it doesn't make sense, throw it away. I'm speaking to all the other yous, okay? What would happen for all of us if we took the stories that create our reality and put them in our garbage can? Rather than I have to keep emptying out all this garbage that keeps coming in because this is how I believe of myself. I believe that I am poor. I believe that I am an addict. I believe that I am fat. I believe that I'll never be successful. I believe that I'll never have what I want. How about if we just took those stories like the trash man did to Mo? When he looked at him, when he had no trash, his outward silo showed no trash at all. But the trash man saw more. Why not give up the stories and see what the creation, what that empty space creates for us? Why not give up the thought that it's hard and allow that which is empty to be filled effortlessly with something new? Why not believe that we're connected to every reality in the world and we're one connection away from it? That the only thing that has to happen is we need to empty our space, compassionate listening, of all of our suffering so that some other story can come in, some new reality can come in, some other way of viewing the world can come in, some new perspective. One of the things that I do for fun is I have on my website, themosaiconline.com, a place that says card rating. It's a free service. You just put in your email, and I have a weekly newsletter that goes out. But if you don't want it, just unsubscribe as soon as you do it. I'm not. you put in your email and you're able to get a card reading. You're able to get 3 different perspectives. I put them as past, present, and future. But you ask a question and 3 of the characters from the Mosaic will just share with you their perspective. I am floored by how this works. Every single time I've done it, and every time people have done it, they say to me, I could not be more spot on. The advice that I was given, the perspective that I was given, it made me see something I didn't see before. How's that possible? It just happens. If we're not even aware that we walk around with a silo protecting ourselves from ourselves, if we're not even aware of our breath, which gives us life, what are we actually aware of? The stories that we tell ourselves over and over and over again that make us less than who we actually are? The beautiful thing about being a writer is when a story doesn't work, you can erase 10 words and change the story. We're the writers of our own book. We're telling our own story. If it's not working, erase the thoughts that create the words that make up the stories that create the life. That freedom is ours. Simple.
That's really powerful as well, understanding that we kind of hold the pen for our lives, and we really need to figure out if what we're living is empowering or how it's making us feel and where it's keeping us at. One of the things that came up too, this was something we had briefly chatted about before, is I'm reading Carlos Castaneda, and he talks about the tonal and the nagul in Tales of Power specifically. And the tonal is kind of physical reality, and the nagul, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but is everything that isn't kind of in physical reality, or is it's kind of the indescribable. And some of what you were talking about, it's amazing to me how life syncs up to where this conversation is kind of on the same wavelength as what I'm reading right now. But you had also mentioned that Castaneda was one of the inspirations for some of this. Who were some of the other inspirations for you in creating the story and just in your own life in general?
I remember a time I worked for a company called Hay House. Hay House is now the largest self-help publishing company in the world. When I came there, they were doing about $3 million a year in sales. I came in as a director of business development, and together with the man who runs the company still to this day, we grew it to $100 million a year in sales. And so I met lots of people who have changed the lives of millions and millions and millions of people. I think one of the gifts that I always had was I never wanted anything from people. I always just felt to give to people because I felt that was the nature of my life, to just give to people. And so because I never wanted anything from them, because I never treated them as if they were somebody more than they were, they would talk to me and they would tell me, they would confide in me. And more often than not, what I saw is the books that they wrote were not the books that they knew, but the books they most needed to read. Just like the Mosaic for me is the book that I most need to read, not the one that I know. Before I wrote it, had I had my druthers, I was on my way to the Himalayas to sit in a cave and meditate for the rest of my life. That's what I wanted to do. So it's sort of odd to me that a guy who wants to just go off into the hills and meditate is now given this commission to go out into the world and spread connection, a message of connection. But I remember sitting in a cab in New York City, stopped at a traffic light, 4-way stop. On the corners, it was midday in downtown Manhattan. And on the corners of every street were probably, on each corner, over 1,000 people each waiting to cross the street. And I was going to meet an agent to sign a deal with an author that I believed would be a New York Times bestselling author. And in that moment, I looked out into the street and I remember saying, if I would have told the cab driver to stop the car and I were to pick randomly any person on any corner and ask them to tell me their story, I was 1,000% sure that it would be a New York Times bestseller. My inspiration is not in the superheroes. My inspiration is in the ordinary people. I remember sitting on a bus in India, just riding from one place to the next, and my eye just, for no reason, looking out the window into this crowded, poor, dirt-ridden streets of Calcutta. And I remember seeing in the corner of my eye a woman. She was a beggar. Her clothes were torn. Her demeanor was not a beggar. Her back was erect. The way she walked had the stride of royalty. And I remember her catching my eye and thinking, this woman's no beggar. This woman is a queen in a land where nobody recognizes her kingdom. It's in the simple, ordinary people that my inspiration comes. It's not in the characters that I wrote. It's in the characters that they will inspire you to take the time to meet once you read it. Who is right in front of you in the grocery store? Who is right behind you in the line waiting to get on the escalator or the elevator? Who is sitting next to you at lunch alone with nobody to talk to? Who's serving you the meal that you're about to eat? Who is mowing your lawn? Who is giving you the flower that you just bought from the flower shop? Who's making your coffee at the coffee shop? Every one of those people have the potential to change every aspect of the way you think about life. They have for me. Are there people well known that inspired me? Sure. I read a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. It changed my life forever. He was the first Indian teacher to come to America and live in America. His name was Paramahansa Yogananda. And on page 7 of that book, he talks about a saint who's bilocating. And I thought, oh my God, I obviously don't see the world that other people see. How's it possible that one body can be in two places at the same time? And he wrote about things that marveled my mind. There are few people who write books to share the wisdom that they know. He was one of those people. Most of us write what we most need to read. And both are great.
Very, very well said. Let me see what time it is. I don't want to hold you too much longer because I'm sure that you're a busy man. One of the questions that I want to ask you in closing, I guess I'll ask this one first. So where can people find your book? What is your website? Like, what's all the plugs for how people can contact you or find the Mosaic?
Thank you very much. Easiest place to go is the mosaiconline.com. That'll have under my place where it talks about me, there's links to all of my social media. They can get my book there as well, but the easiest place to get my book is also Amazon. We're so used to using Amazon as a place to get it. You go to Amazon, it's on sale for less than I sell it for on my site because that's what Amazon does. So go to Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle or a hardcover. I would really recommend that people pick up the hardcover copy. It's beautiful. It just feels, there's something about it. I had someone write me and she said, there's a DNA in your book that I knew before I even bought it, just from looking at it, that it would change my life. When I held it in my hands, I didn't even have to read it. There was an energy in it that just felt good. That was my dream. So I'd really like people to get it. And they can see a little bit about what I do on the mosaiconline.com. They can get that card rating. One of the things, and there's other things on there that are just interesting. I have podcasts on there, and I have blogs on there, and one day, what will come? I don't know how it will come, but it's not my job to know how it will come. Is we will create a community of unlike minds where people will be able to come together to innovate, where they will be able to speak different points of view. When we see the same thing and hang with people who see the same thing we see, we do the same thing over and over again. When we have the courage to allow people of unlike mind to come in and speak with us, when we're not defensive and siloed to protect ourselves from those beliefs, but we think, is there any one thing that they said that would allow me to see the world differently than I see it? Innovation is seeing what we don't see. Miracles is the ability to realize that what we see is only a part of the world that we see. And when we see what we don't see, we call those miracles. Miracles are right in front of our eyes. Innovation is right there in front of us. We just need to come together and allow each other to coexist and share. This is way too long a story, but do you have time for one more story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. There are a group of people, they have something called swarm intelligence. And are you familiar with swarm? What that means?
I've never heard of it, no.
So what they did is they took a look at the way nature is. They looked at the way birds fly, and you see birds fly in a flock, and it seems sometimes there's one at the point that is leading it, but they realize that birds are not being led by anybody. Their moves are so in harmony with each other that there's not enough time for one to lead and the others to. They're all moving in the same rhythm at the same time. Fish swim in a swarm like that in the same exact way. They all just move sort of together. Human beings don't swarm. We congregate, but we don't swarm. And they wondered if it's possible for a human being to have a swarm mentality. And they didn't know if it was possible or not, but they said, we're looking for tests that we can do with people because we believe in the human intelligence. We believe that human beings could swarm if they were given the opportunity. And as soon as they came out, some skeptics said, oh, sure, right, that's never going to happen. You guys are crazy. I mean, why would we even want to do that? We're too individual to do that. And they said, well, we don't know. You might be right, but we just want to experiment with it. And they said, okay, we'll give you an experiment. If you want to do this, we challenge you to pick the winner of the Kentucky Derby, but not just the first place winner. We want you to pick first, second, third, and fourth. And by the way, just so you know, the odds against you doing that are 568,000 to 1. Not good odds. and the sworn people said, that's fabulous. Let's give it a try. What a great thing. If we can do it here, gosh, where else could we do it? And who knows if we will be able to do it? Maybe we won't, but we don't lose anything. So they created a virtual room. And in that virtual room, they created a puck at the center of the room, and they had an octagon. And on each of the points of the octagon, they put one of the horses' names that was running the Kentucky Derby. And they asked 60 random people, people who liked horse racing from all around the world to come into this room. They weren't handicappers, they weren't trainers, they weren't horse owners, they weren't professional gamblers. They were just people who liked to watch horse racing. And they said, with your mouse, you will be able to affect the movement of the puck in the center to the horse, to the horse that you believe is going to win this race. And they watched what happened. Within a very short period of time, those 60 horse lovers chose the first, second, third, and fourth place horse. And they were right. Now, here's the amazing thing. That story in itself is amazing. But here's even the more amazing thing. Not one of them picked the first place horse as their first place horse. Not one of them picked the second place horse to come in second on their card. Only one of them picked the third place horse to come in third on their card. And nobody picked the fourth place horse to come in fourth. So it wasn't like people led the movement because they all believed that this horse was going to come in and everybody just joined on and followed. That's the crowd mentality that human beings think that we follow. But together they were able to come up with an answer that they themselves would not have even given. There is a new consciousness that is emerging. That is a swarm consciousness or a mosaic consciousness or a connected consciousness, where if we have the chance and the opportunity to put down our petty differences and come together to look at how do we solve the problems that exist in the world, we can do it. And my goal is to one day start something that I'll call the $1 a month club. The cost to be in it will be $1 every month. And the goal of it will be to let everybody in the world be involved in it. If you can't afford $1, we'll figure out a way to get you in. But the thought is to invite people into this space where we can communicate to each other and speak without anger and listen without judgment, and just have an opportunity to share ideas. And if we get 1,000 people, the results of it won't be so great. But if we get 100 million people or 1 billion people, that means we'll be getting $1 billion a month. And what we'll do with that $1 billion a month, in my dream, in my vision, in the reality that I already see out there happening, that I just don't see how it will, is we will ask the people of that community through swarm intelligence, through the Mosaic connection, what are the problems of the world that we need to solve and how would we solve them? There should be nowhere in the world that people are hungry. There should be nowhere in the world that people are homeless. There should be nowhere in the world where people don't have proper health care or proper drink or good drinking water. There should be nowhere in the world where people have to sell their bodies to make a living. The problems that are in front of us are problems that should have been solved a long time ago. But because our silo has to solve them rather than solving them, we're stuck. Because this silo won't let this silo solve them, no matter which silo you're in. It's time for that to end. And it's time for us to build a new paradigm. Bucky Fuller said, you can't change the thinking of the world with the thinking of the world. You have to create a new paradigm that makes the old paradigm obsolete. To me, the Mosaic is the new paradigm. Pieces coming together, no one right, no one wrong, no one teaching, no one above, no one below, but just coming together to share the connected reality of what happens when we all come together to solve the problems that should no longer be problems. That's my dream.
Wow. That's incredibly beautiful. And I hope that does come to fruition, because it's definitely inspiring and it sounds amazing. That swarm consciousness stuff too is blowing my mind. Like I really, I've never heard that before. It's something that I really want to look into more as well. So
I think you can find it. I think they have a website called Swarm AI, swarmai.com. They're amazing. They're doing amazing work. They don't even know I'm promoting them the way I'm promoting them. I just think the work they're doing is amazing. And they say it better than I could say it, but it's Mosaic. It's the Mosaic consciousness. It's the consciousness that happens when we come together, broken pieces, whole pieces, big pieces, small pieces, all different colored pieces. Doesn't matter. What we create in the unity of who we are together is so exquisite and can never be found in the individuality of what we are.
Yeah, I feel like with the last story you told and with everything you've said, it's going to be hard to top the question that I'm going to ask you now. Like you're not, I think I should have asked it earlier, but I like to ask guests to close the show in their own particular words and fashion. I feel like you already closed it really well. But if you have anything else that you want to add, or one final plug or whatever, the floor is yours. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time to come over, chat with me. And I've really appreciated our conversation. And you're more than welcome to come back on again if you so desire. The floor is yours.
I would love it. I would love it. I always look at things as a beginning rather than an end. So what's possible here? If we were to realize we're one connection away from an entirely different world, if we were to realize that the world we see is not real, it's just the world we see, what would happen if we could see the world we don't see? What I would invite people to do is come out of their silos, come out of their protection, come out of the places where they believe they have to stay in order to be safe. It's not scary in the unsafe place. One of the things that will help you is seriously buy the book, The Mosaic. Get it on Amazon. Just buy it. Read it. Listen to the beautiful things that happen to the ordinary through the association with ordinary people. If I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being what you absolutely do not want for yourself or your children, and 10 being what you absolutely love them to have, where would the word ordinary sit in there? For you, where would that sit? Do you want your kids to be ordinary? Do you want to be ordinary?
No.
Okay. Most people say a 1 or a 2. If I were to take that same scale and I would ask you, put the word extraordinary on there, where would you want to be? Where would you be 1 to 10, with 10 being what you'd love to be?
Probably 10. I feel like I'm there already, though.
Okay. So in the space between the words of the Mosaic, this is what it's shown me. And it may just be a little bit of a fun play of words in the English language. But I always ask people, if you don't want to be ordinary, why do you want to be extra of something you don't want to be? Okay. And so what the Mosaic sort of showed me is that extraordinary things happen when extraordinaries come together. We were never meant to be extraordinary. We were never meant to be more than we think we have to be. We were just meant to be ourselves, ordinary human beings. The most beautiful thing in the world is a sunrise and a sunset. It's ordinary. It happens every day. It happens. We know exactly the time it's going to happen. The most ordinary thing in the world is that night follows day and day follows night. It's the most exquisite transformation that could ever be possible. The most ordinary thing in the world is for the mountain to be the mountain and not the river. The mountain doesn't want to be the river. It doesn't try to put on a cape and suddenly become the river. And the river doesn't want to become the wind. It's a river. It's ordinary. That's what it does. Where is this thought in human mind that we have to be extraordinary? It just plays into a self-loathing process in my mind of we can never be what we want to be. So we hate ourselves for not being what we think we should be, but we should be just what we are. And we would never hate ourselves for that. We would be kind to ourselves. Just practice kindness, simple art of kindness. Being kind to ourselves. What would that give us if we didn't have to be anything other than we are? If we weren't broken and needed to be fixed? If there wasn't something wrong with us that we needed to change? But that we were absolutely perfect in this moment that we're in. And that the next moment will take us to where the next moment will take us. Just like the hitchhiker says, there's nowhere to go but where I am. How would that change everything we do in life? We all want to be somewhere other than where we are. Why don't we take a moment and enjoy the beautiful inhalation and exhalation of the moment we're in? Sit with our breath, practice kindness, and be here now. How exquisite, how absolutely exquisite this moment is.
Thanks for listening to the show, Phoenix family. Just a reminder, we are fan-funded and you can contribute with the link in the show notes. Other ways to support the show include leaving excellent reviews wherever possible, subscribing to our YouTube channel, engaging with our content on social media, sending me an email, or reaching out via voice message through the Anchor app. Your support is greatly appreciated. Much love and synchronicity. Peace.